Some of the fields are already starting to produce the radish. No, most of the fields I've seen have not had anything going yet, or I just see kind of the leafy part. But this field here, this one's right next to my Cottondale yard. This is probably my best yard here. But there it is, there's our radish. That sucker's definitely in full bloom. And I can already see honeybee on it. I'm sure they're working it. But yeah, if I can hit all those hives with this thin feed, this warm weather, they are gonna explode on this stuff. This is just a massive, massive boost for us this late in the season. You can already see it's covered in moss, butterflies. Pollinators love this stuff. All right, guys, I'm gonna be honest, it's not gonna probably be a super riveting video this week. We got some cold weather, so I haven't been able to open the hives too much. Plus Thanksgiving, and then we got some rain coming later this week, it looks like. So all I've been really mostly doing this week is like what I said I was going to do last week, is just run around, mostly feed the hives, check the splits if it's time. I know a couple of yards I'm about to go feed today. I'm just a little bit early, but I'm trying to pump out as much syrup as I can. Since we've got a little bit of a cold snap, I am making the syrup just a little tiny bit thicker, not much. I'm doing a 1 part water to 1.5 parts sugar, give or take, instead of the 1 to 2 I was doing. I'm still not ready quite to swap over to a 1 to 1. I've been running around, even some of the yards that I fed 2 weeks ago, the 1 to 2 syrup, they seem like they're taking it fine. I topped a lot of their buckets off, and what I was noticing is a yard that was pretty good was draining, I'd say about half the hives in a location's been taking all 2 gallons of the 1 to 2 syrup in 2 weeks, and the other half of the yard had taken about half a bucket, so about a gallon. So I'm still trying to run around and just refill those, because in like that particular instance where I was running back around after 2 weeks is because they were so heavy with foundation. If I haven't, I'm not making any more splits. I am done. So normally I'll check these flags. If they're, dead or queenless or whatever, I redistribute the resources through the yard as necessary. If the yard doesn't need it, and there's been some cases they haven't, I just throw it on the truck, and I go and try to shoot straight over to a yard I know that usually has a lot of foundation, and I'll dump that comb in there just so I don't risk moss getting to it or whatever. And then I'll fill the buckets back up in that yard, so the bees can start storing the syrup in that comb right away. So that has slowed me down a little bit. So I was hoping I would just run out and feed hundreds of hives a day. It's not been realistic. By the time I get the syrup on the truck and get it mixed, and get out there and check the splits and all that, I'm feeding between 100 to 200 colonies per day. Most 200 if that's kind of all I'm doing. But if I'm going to be digging around, it's closer to 100. There have been a couple yards that I had to slow down and work a little bit just because they had a lot of old foundation in them. So I brought them comb. I pulled out the old foundation, gave them the new frames. So I believe I've gotten the vast majority of the foundation yards fixed already this week. There's still foundation around. Like I know this yard, I think they've got 7-8 frames up here, but it's all new stuff. And I remember the deeps down here were very good. So that's a big weight off me. I was worried about the bees being able to expand just due to foundation binding, and I'm going to free up more. What I'm doing is I'm taking a little white thumbtack. If I come across a hive that's got a lot of foundation, I'm just sticking it in the lid. I'm writing that in my notes so I can go, okay, if I find a yard and I've got a bunch of dead outs, I know to drive straight to the yard with a lot of white pins, and I dump them in there. The hives are already marked, so I'm not having to re-dig through the whole yard. And it's working pretty well. I don't think I'm going to finish all the hives this week. I'm almost positive I won't finish this week, so I'll probably still have to be feeding into next week, but I should finish sometime next week. Trying to give all the hives another bucket, and then I'll slow down and start going back through them like I normally do. I just want to get this feed on them because it was warm until just yesterday, and we have a little cold snap, and it's supposed to warm back up. It's just had a couple days here where it's a little chilly. We do have to run up to Tennessee next week for a little bit. We're going to meet the contractor for the barn. He's going to tell us if we need to put some dirt down, to help with the elevation. He's going to give us a quote for a slightly larger barn. I'm asking him maybe for a 50 by 75 foot, by 16 foot high barn. See if we can swing that, because we'd have a little more space. And yeah, pretty much just got to get that done while we're up there. And that's going to throw little things out of whack. Monday afternoon, I've got an interview with a Australian beekeeper, Brent Nixon. He's also a podcaster, so he's going to interview me on his podcast in Australia. I got to do it at noon just because of the time difference, between the northern and southern hemisphere. It's hard for us to link up because basically when I'm waking up, he's not really going to bed, but it's late in the day, so we have to kind of like pick a weird time to do the interview. So I think the interview's at 12 Central my time, and I don't know, it's probably gonna be 6 a.m. or something his time. I don't know. It's gonna be a little wacky, but that's gonna be pretty cool. And I've got to do a queen breeding lecture, talk, whatever presentation at the Dothan, Alabama Bee Club. I think coming Thursday night. So that's gonna be pretty cool too. I think they have a pretty big beekeeping club. So yeah, a lot going on. That next week I'll be pretty busy. So I just want to make sure I get syrup on everybody. And I want to try to get the barn and all that stuff going, and just start chugging along, moving there. I also reached out to a Tupelo broker down in Weewa. That's where, most people think Tupelo comes from. I mean, it comes from everywhere in this area, but Tupelo's got a good reputation. That's what most people think of when they think of Tupelo honey. And there is a beekeeper down there who's got several bee yards, and they'll do like a crop sharing thing. So, they usually take whole semi loads, and they're not going to just take a few hives, but you'd send them a semi down there. They take care of the hives. They put on honey supers. They extract it, barrel it, and I think they get like 50% of the honey crop, which is not bad. So I reached out to them, see if we could send them a semi this year. I think they're actually all booked up, but they're going to keep me on a backup list, because I was realizing at this point, if we send 3 semis to almonds, I really didn't have the time or energy to split 2 semis this spring. So I'm like, how in the world can I possibly split 3 semis while having that swarming disaster we were fighting this year? So I would almost rather just send a semi, because Tupelo bloom's a little late. I think I'd probably ship them like mid-April. They'd come back about a month later. But it would just take them off my back, and I could focus on, finding bee yards and splitting and everything we're going to have going on in Tennessee. I think we got enough hives at this point, and good enough hives too, that I can kind of play around with a semi-load. I can just send, so I kind of want to do that, maybe try crop sharing, try some other kind of pollination. I never really want to risk it because, again, you're sending your bees to total strangers, and, I can come down here, obviously, but I'm going to be super busy, so you're just trusting random people on the internet, which is scary, with 400 colonies. But, otherwise, I'm going to stash them in Tennessee, and they're going to swarm and do nothing on me, and then I'm going to freak out. May as well send them away, take a little risk, but, if it works out well. And, I called around and asked about the guys. They have a really good reputation, so I'm comfortable trying it. And it may not work, but maybe it'll work out later. I'm going to look for other people too, see if there's anything else we can do with maybe a semi. I think I'm willing to roll the dice and just see if we can't make a little money with them. And if we get burnt, then okay, whatever, learn my lesson. But I think even if something kind of went haywire with 1 semi load, we would still be quite okay. As long as they don't steal it, I'm just meaning like, the bees come back looking like crap because it got sprayed or something. Obviously, they still 400 eyes, they'll be in a bind. But yeah, so just a lot of little stuff going on, really. And but other than that, I'm just going to keep running around and feeding as fast as I can. And that's pretty it. It's been kind of boring this week as far as beekeeping goes, but I do feel better getting all the syrup on. I'm blowing through it pretty darn quick, even with mixing all that water in, but I think it's the right thing to do. I'm sure there's some hives, that are honey bound, and I'm kind of making them worse honey bound. I'm sure there are hives that are queenless or dead or dying, and I'm feeding. So I am wasting a little bit of syrup with this method, but considering I was already 2 weeks behind schedule, this is kind of helped me. It's not going to help me catch up as far as like the actual internal hive work goes, but I can catch up, I believe, with the feed schedule, which honestly is pretty darn important. So, and that'll put me on track, and then I could slow down and just start digging around these girls, and hopefully start grading here possibly as early as next week, if not very, very soon. All right, well, I'm gonna get to feeding these girls. Got a new syrup pump handle here. Way too expensive. This sucker was $150. It's just a regular gas pump nozzle. It's a lot more comfortable, I guess, than my old cheap one I had. And the nice thing is the nozzle's a lot longer, so I can actually reach across the pallet, which I couldn't really, well, I could do it with the other one, but I had to kind of like lean over. So when you're filling buckets all day, believe it or not having to stretch over every pallet starts to get pretty darn nice. And what it'll do is, the one thing I do kind of like about it is if I'm accidentally overfilling the buckets, just like if you're kind of putting too much gas in your car, it'll turn off, and it'll auto shut off. So that's pretty handy, so I don't waste so much syrup. I was like, well, maybe it'll pay for itself. I think $150 for a stinking little pump handle was a little excessive. I don't know if that's inflation or they're just normally like that. I mean, I guess they're supposed to be well made because they're putting, you know, gasoline in vehicles all day, but I don't know. Kind of cool, slight little upgrade. And I don't know. That's the riveting thing that happened this week. I bought a new syrup handle. That's it. Since I don't have much going on today, I'm trying to replace the towels here under these yellow caps. See, I just take a little piece of shop towel and I put it like that. It helps reduce the any leaking around this cap. And sometimes the caps just come loose. Acts as like a little gasket. I absolutely hate these type of buckets with a deep burning passion. But again, a buddy of mine sold them to me when I was running a little tight on our budget one year. He gave me a good deal, so I did what I had to do. But I am gonna thank the day that I can chunk those suckers in the trash. These are so much better. You can see it's got that built-in gasket here. They're not even that much more expensive, honestly. I have never, in all the years we've used these, and we've used them for many years, never once had one of these things completely break on me. This top piece will crumble off, but the gasket has always stayed good. And I can just pop it in there, you hear clicks. That's it. That thing has never popped out, never come loose. That gasket is going to last longer than the bucket itself. But these yellow caps, sometimes you get a year out of them. Sometimes they're not even that long. They break down. They used to have black ones, and the black ones lasted forever. But I buy them from Kaplugs, I believe is the company. They don't sell the black ones anymore, or at least not at this size. They went to yellow some years ago, and the yellow is just absolutely garbage quality plastic when it comes to like getting hit with the UV rays. So I do this, it kind of helps. Sometimes I can, if a bucket's new, sometimes the cap will work, but you can get a lot longer out of that. But if you use the shop towel as a little gasket, but it's just a pain in the butt, man. I spend like 2 or 3 times as long on a yard that has like these type of caps when it comes to feeding as I do like these. You see how I just pop that in, it's done. Here I got to bring a roll of towels and cut them up and rip them up and put them in there. It's really tedious. And, you know, now the good thing is the shop towels are pretty tough. I can usually get, you know, a few months out of them, especially if I kind of double fold them, make them extra thick. But they will, you know, fall apart. So I have to do that and then pick up all the trash. Here's somebody was asking me the other day what I use to poke the holes with. It's just this. It's like a little screwdriver or something I bought. It's a little cheap one at Harbor Freight. They came in a little pack. I usually just put them in a vise and I straighten them out, but anything, honestly. I think I used to use an ice pick too, and I put in, right now I'm just putting in 2 holes like that, really small holes, nothing major. And normally in the earlier part of the year we do 3 holes, but since I'm a little scared with this thin syrup and the cold, I'm just doing 2, so the flow's not as strong. If you just put 1 hole, I find the bees have a really hard time pulling it because they need some kind of, you know, they need to be able to pull air from one side to create a vacuum. And I do the same thing with these. So the bees will, especially when it gets cold, they'll propolize those holes by the time I come around and refeed. And believe it or not, and some people won't believe me, but I've seen many times over the years, you can have a full bucket of syrup, and if you forget to poke those holes, you can come back and that hive will be slam starved to death, or it'll be on the verge of death. Maybe there are some hives that will get up there and break the propolis, because I mean they certainly could, right? They made it, and get to it. But I've seen way too many times where I forget to poke the holes, and usually it happens every single yard I'll miss one and it'll be filled up. And sometimes I'm sure I poked it and the bees just go back for whatever reason and seal it back up. And, you know, if they were honey bound, that would make sense. But some of them seem like they're starving to death and they reseal the bucket. So unfortunately, this is something you got to do every single time you feed. Eventually, too, poking the holes here will create a fracture and a weak spot in the plastic, and it'll just break. So you're kind of damaging the buckets. A buddy of mine, I saw what he does is he pokes holes here in the cap on each side, so like a little cross pattern. That works too. Of course, it also causes this cap to break even faster. It starts splitting. That's another option. I personally prefer to do this because it's just easier for me to kind of re-break the propolis seal every time I feed. But super tedious. I hope we can budget and just get rid of these suckers. Go over to those. And I have been noticing, and I know someone has mentioned it in the comments before, those black buckets are leaking. I don't know if they're leaking or the bees are taking it or what the heck's going on, but those are empty way more often. Some of these other bee yards that I've been coming out and just refeeding after 2 weeks, almost every single black bucket was slam empty. Whereas the white buckets, some of them were empty, but many of the white buckets were only at 1 gallon that had been drained about 1 gallon. So I do wonder if it's that hot black plastic getting warm and contracting and expanding in the sunlight that's causing it to break, which the hives all looked fine. I mean, they definitely, you could see they had drank the syrup. They looked strong. They didn't look washed out or anything. Maybe because the syrup's just a little warmer, the bees are able to take it and digest it more rapidly than these buckets. I don't know. I don't feel like it's a bad thing. I do tend to notice when I'll look around, when I come back to the bee yard, I'll look here on the side of the pallet, and a lot of times with the black buckets, there'll be like a little hole, probably where the syrup's running out, like dripping, kind of like that, where I just dug on my foot. I don't see that as often with the white buckets, so, you know, I don't know. We might go back to a different color, which I'll try a different color next year. We want to try all different colors so we kind of know we can match the color of the bucket with the year that I bought them, so we can kind of rotate those out. But yeah, I'm not super, I'm not going to say the black is bad yet. I haven't been convinced it is, but I'm skeptical of them, you know, like I don't trust them. I'm looking at them, I'm watching them. I have a sneaking suspicion that they're leaking faster than the whites, which, you know, even if that plastic holds up longer to the sunlight than the whites, is that really good if I'm washing hives out and wasting, you know, gallons and gallons and gallons of syrup? Probably not. So we'll try a new color next year, figure it out, but, you know, something to watch out for with those black ones. See, I started pushing the cap in. These are starting to bust already. That's awesome. I can see the cracks already forming. That one's done. Problem is I didn't bring any more 2-gallon buckets with me, just because they're all in use. So all I got are some 1-gallon buckets. That's a shame. But I'll swap this out for the 1 gallons, and they just get a little, they'll be on a diet this week. Sorry, girls. Got to watch your weight. Here's something I've never had happen before. I went to go flip the bucket over, and the lid completely detached. That's pretty awesome. I guess this cold weather's been wreaking havoc on some of these old plastic ones, because that's the second one to bust in this yard. I had 2 break on me yesterday. And don't drown in there, girl. Anyways, I went to go flip it and just completely, like, went right down, of course, my stinking rain boots. So that is an unpleasant sensation, especially when with cold as it is. The good thing is these buckets are, I can use this. It's not broken, so I use it as a tool bucket or something. I'll throw tools in there, stick it in the barn, and then forget about them and lose them. You know, one time, a long time ago, we were driving, and I had a bunch of buckets on the back of the, probably in the pickup truck. I'm sure it was before we had the flatbed, because we used to like overstack the pickup truck because I had too many buckets in a yard. I didn't want to make multiple trips or whatever. And I guess there's this guy following behind me one day. We were going down the road, and I don't know how he got my number. I don't know if he got it off the side of my truck or he just recognized the truck or what. And he called me. He's like, man, your buckets were flying off when I was driving behind you. And I thought he was upset. You know, I thought the guy was going to try to sue me, like I bucket had hit his windshield or something. You know, you don't know. And I was like, oh, God, you know, I'm so sorry, sir. You know, I apologize. I'm sorry. And he's like, can I have the buckets? And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, man. He's like, I see you driving around town sometimes, and, you know, I pick your buckets off the side of the road. And he said, I love them. He's like, I use them for like nail buckets and stuff. And I was like, this guy had just been tracking me for who knows how long. And I didn't even realize the buckets had been blowing off, you know. I'll see one here and there, but there's other beekeepers who use these buckets. So I'll go, oh, you know, that's so-and-so's buckets or whatever. They're not my buckets. No, they were definitely probably my buckets. So anyways, I guess they're pretty handy little things. And I wanted the buckets back, to be honest, but kind of hard, you know. Guys like, you know, hey, man, you're busting my windshield. Better just give them to them to pacify them. But anyways, I did learn my lesson from yesterday, because yesterday I didn't bring any spare buckets with me because I thought I had culled out the bad ones. So 2 hives didn't even get fed yesterday. So I'm bringing at least these 1 gallons along with me. So I'll just fill that up, and another hive that's just getting 1 gallon. But hey, at least they are getting food. All right, finished feeding Creek here. Really, you saw I couldn't really do much other than just mess around with the buckets, top them off, get out the bad ones. I'm gonna run by and feed John's. It's just a few miles down the road, but it's getting stinking cold, man. My fingers are kind of getting numb a little bit. It's, you know, anybody from a cold state's gonna laugh at me, but it's 57 degrees. So the bees are clear. It's warm enough for the bees to fly. That's why I'm okay with them feeding them. But it's supposed to get down to 38 tonight, so that will be pretty cold. When I kind of have little cold snaps like that, I try to feed a little earlier in the day and then stop feeding later, a little bit earlier than I would normally. Like, I don't want to be out here at dark filling these buckets with all this water, just because the bees are going to start to cluster. I cracked a couple open very quickly, and the smaller colonies were already beginning to cluster up around the brood. So, you know, and there's quite a bit of foundation in these top boxes. I'm hoping I did the correct thing last time I was here and, you know, took the brood and rotated it up here if they were weak. Most of the hives I can see when I take the bucket off, you can see there's bees waiting there, but there were some of them, they look kind of empty. It looked like foundation. So I know for a fact I added 2 or 3 frames of comb up here last time I was here. So a little worried about it dripping on them. I don't really truly know what the temperature range is when I should stop based off the water mixture with the syrup. You know, you could feed like a 2-part sugar, 1-part water syrup, even when it's very, very cold, because that stuff barely drips, it barely runs. The bees have a hard time even pulling it out of the bucket. But this stuff does drip a bit, and with the temperature fluctuations and the plastic contracting, which you can see is definitely happening with the ones that are fracturing, will cause it to drip more. When I'm in the shade, it's pretty cold. Now, once I get over in the sunlight, you know, it feels pretty darn warm. But usually I let the bees guide me. If I see the bees are flying, I'm like, and it's still kind of in the earlier part of the day, I'm like, I'll go ahead and take the risk. We're going to jump back up here in the 70s in a couple of days. So there'll be, you know, honestly, tonight's the only really cold night. It's going to be in the 60s tomorrow and be a little warmer at night, and then we'll be in 70s. But it looks like coming pretty soon here, we're going to be in the 60s during the day, and the nights are going to drop, I don't know what, I didn't even see, probably like in the 50s. So it's getting cooler for sure. So I just really want to get this last round of thin syrup on everybody ASAP. And I may just have to start feeding a thicker, maybe a 1-to-1 after this. We'll just have to watch the weather, watch the bees, see what they do. I don't know exactly when I'm going to shut that down, but these definitely need the thin syrup for all that foundation drawing that's up there. So hope I'm not making a mistake. You know, the other hives I've been checking on throughout, you know, the week, they seem like they're handling it fine, and we've had some cold snaps. You know, earlier this week too. Doesn't seem like anybody's gotten washed out or frozen or anything. But you know, always good to be mindful of it. I just kind of have to take it a day by day at this point, and I may need to adjust based off the weather and how the bees are reacting to this super thin syrup. But I'm gonna run over to John's real quick and get those buckets filled before it gets too cold. And I believe John's is probably gonna be in the shade, so they're even gonna be chillier, I imagine. I may just have to call it a day. I wanted to feed 3 yards like this today. That was my plan, but I don't know. It might be a little too risky, because by the time I get to that drive out to that 3rd yard, it's kind of out of the way. I'd be putting a bucket on them like not far away from sundown, and shoot, and it dropping down to 38. I think that would probably be a bad call. So I'll probably just delay that yard for another day. See, now this makes me feel better. I came back over to the truck. They're buzzing, they're working, they're pretty active, which we're a little bit over here in the sun, but you're getting all that syrup that I spilt. Yeah, so they're pretty active. But I don't want to push my luck, so I better go ahead and head on to the next yard. All right, here at John's. Going to give them some food. It's what I thought. Yeah, the sun's going to catch the tree line there. These girls are already getting in the shade. And already not seeing a whole lot of activity. This yard was about the same strength as creeks over there, so I thought I'd see a little more flight activity. It's crazy. I'll just getting in a little bit of shade will drop the temperature so much. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of activity going on. I'm gonna feed them. I'm here. I'm gonna do it. But there's one hive, and I know these ones with the yellow thumbtacks. Those were very, very strong. There's a few splits here as well. I think I made last month. I don't know if they're gonna make it or not. I'm pretty sure most of the splits here were. I believe they were queenless, cellless splits, and I think I'm right at 30 days, give or take a day. I'd have to check. I mean, it's too cold. I'm not opening them now to check, but queens could be laying. They're probably still alive if I build them strong enough. I need to come and work like here in creek and stuff properly, but I'm just gonna give them some food today. Yeah, man, they are not doing anything. It's crazy because over there in creek they were active. I think too, creek being in that sand seems to retain the heat pretty well. Over here, it is nippy. Yeah, hopefully they're doing good. I know they have quite a bit of foundation here as well, but I also added, I think 2 or 3 comb to all the boxes up here last month. And they all have good new foundation. There's some bees. Hey girls, I'm gonna give you a little bit of food. Dinner time. See, now hives like this make me nervous. I'll flip the bucket over. I can see there's not much there. I can see there's some comb. It looks like some capped honey maybe. Definitely new frames, which is what I expect. I believe I changed all the bad old frames up there, gave them some new stuff. I'm like, I want to open it, but it's so chilly. I know I shouldn't. I see a couple bees down here at the entrance. And I marked this one with a yellow pin, so it must have been really strong. They're probably just starting to cluster. But it always freaks me out because I'm like, man, I don't see any bees in the top. Is the bucket going to drip on them? Should I rotate them? Are they dead? And I'm wasting my time and my syrup. This one likely is good, but, you know, I can't be certain either. But it's just too cold to open them because if you open them even for a second, that heat's going to escape. They're going to have to spend a lot of time trying to rebuild their heat back up, and the outside edges of the brood nest, so the frames, if there's a frame like towards out here or out here that's maybe got some open brood on there, it can chill them and wipe out the outside edge of the brood over there. So I can actually shrink the brood nest, which is definitely the opposite thing I'm trying to do this time of year. It's the whole point of me feeding them, trying to boost them up a little bit and draw foundation. Although with this cold weather, I don't know if they'll really produce much wax, getting as cold as it is. I don't know. I mean, you know, that bucket's going to last 2 or 3 weeks. So, and with it coming to be warm again, even if they don't really utilize the syrup much in these next couple of cold nights, it's going to get warm and they'll have it. So it's always get kind of wrestle with that decision to feed them like this. But I'm going to go ahead and just do it while I'm here and hope for the best. This is the hive across from the one I was just showing there where there was nothing up top. You can see I feel better. Like when they're like that, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, they can handle that bucket. They're ready for it. Look at them. Which is interesting because this one does not have a yellow pin. So I marked it as probably not ready to go to almonds. And that one does have yellow pin, which is strong. And yet there's not a single bee up there. But they're doing okay. I will say one thing I do like feeding when it's a little bit chilly is I can leave all these camps open. You can't do that during like the warmer days because the bees will be drowning in there. Even though they won't drown because the buckets are empty, but they'll get down in there, and then you're spending like 5 minutes a bucket trying to shake the bees out of there. Otherwise, you will drown them when you refill them. So that's a little, I guess, a little convenience factor there about feeding in a cold day. All right, finished up John's yard. No broken buckets this time, thank goodness. Got a little bit of leaking on these. Part of it's just me adding all that extra water. It just takes longer to seal. As the syrup gets thicker, it'll drip less, but you know, thankfully it's not too much money on the ground since it's mostly water. But I hate that. I always have to check some of these. I kind of go over and tap them, see if they get loose at all, because I mean, look at that. I hate that. But they should form a seal. And they don't all do it. Some of them are okay, but I found a couple the other day that just all 2 gallons are just completely just washed out on the ground. I only saw it because I saw like a river of syrup running. So they busted. And what scares me is it was a yard that I had fed the month prior at night. So they could have also leaked the month prior. I just didn't see because it was dark. Or again, they could have snapped in the cold. That is happening. But always worry about it. One problem with these buckets, I guess they don't have that. There's problems with the internal feeders, but I am not a fan of the internal feeders. Like I said, we tried them last year, and I don't like. They take up way too much space. You can't rock the hives. It splashes everywhere. The bees still drown in them, even with the caps and ladders. I mean, buckets are far from perfect. They got a lot of problems. For sure, they're an absolute headache, but I'd still rather have these buckets than an internal feeder any day of the week. I think the only exception would be is if I moved my hives a lot, I was migratory. Yeah, I get it. A buddy of mine puts internal feeders. He puts them on the semi. They go to California for almonds with whatever he's got. It's a gallon and a half feed or something like that. That's pretty handy. I like that, but I still prefer my buckets. I'm going to stick with those until I can find something better, but that's about it. It's not too late today, and the sun's still shining, but and my fingers are numb. I am still quite sticky from that bucket blowing up on me in the last yard, so I'm probably going to call it a day. I definitely could have fed another yard, but it's just getting too cold. I don't see any bees here. There was one hive, I think it was this one. I kind of hit it accidentally. I bumped it when I was filling the bucket, and they bowled out of there, so that one's plenty strong. But the other ones, there was very little activity. Some of them, the only reason I even knew they're alive is just because you could see the feeder hole. There was a little bit of bees there. And there's a few flying a little bit, but it's pretty minimal. So it's warm enough now, they can definitely break the cluster. They can get up there. They can hopefully control that syrup flow. And that's it. So I don't want to push my luck with another location, but all right, well, that's it for today. Not super riveting, not super exciting, but that's just how it is this time of year. There's only so much you can do when, when Mother Nature kind of sets a time limit on you with the temperature. That's, I can't really go against it, so. All right, well, maybe something cool will happen later this week. If not, this is all I'm going to be doing, and hopefully next week I'll be able to finish this up. I just made it back to the house. It's pretty chilly over here, but you can see the open feeder pools. Those bees are clearly still on it. Got to add some more straw. See a few of them drowned there. But yeah, they're still clustering on there. And I can still see them flying back and forth from the farm hives over there. So, and it's, they're in the sun, man. I tell you, the hives that are in sunlight, they can work so much longer than the hives that catch a little bit of shade. I bet the cell builder support colonies out there under that tree line, they're in the shade. I bet they're not doing as much. Which they're a little bit stronger, but I can see them already coming out of those singles up there. And if those tiny little singles, because man, these are the weakest hives we have in the whole apiary. And they're out here working just fine. So that makes me feel better about the feeding them. I try to follow the bees and, hey, if they think it's warm enough for them, then hey, it's warm enough for me to feed them. That's my feeling. All right, here at Alford, 12 pallet yard. It was decent last time I was here about a month ago. Populations were a little low, a little heavy on foundation, but not terrible. And they all had new foundation. You can see they got a lot of new boxes. So, and I know I had a lot of problems with some of those old buckets rupturing on me. And I swapped some of them out for the new buckets, but I think the yard was just kind of average quality. It wasn't as good as I wanted, but this yard always jumps up. Well, always. I got it last year. Last year it jumped up when the radish bloomed because we brought in some 5-frame nukes like in August or something last year. And I didn't think any of them would go to almonds, And we actually ended up sending a chunk of hives from this location. So I almost wanted to put 24 pallets here, but it's so close to the landowner's house. That's a lot of hives that drop literally in somebody's backyard. So I stuck with 12 pallets. So hopefully they're doing pretty good. I'm already seeing a bunch of yellow jackets. I think there's those little pygmy yellow jackets live in the ground. And what's weird, this bucket feels pretty full. See some beetles there and one bee. That's weird. It's got a gallon. That one's empty. This one probably is dead. Look at that. It got robbed out. It's wax cappings. Ton of dead bees here. Something happened to them. This bucket's empty. Ah, shoot. Yeah, that one got wiped out for sure. Don't know what happened there. I know I wrote in my notes when I was here a month ago, like, the yard wasn't doing amazing, but it wasn't doing bad. It was just kind of like, you know, I really thought they just needed more syrup to boost them up. This one also feels like it's got about a gallon. That doesn't make any sense. And in fact, look at that. First of all, look at, holy crap, look at the stinking yellow jackets. I hope they're not bothering the bees. Look at that syrup that's dripped out. I gave them a 1 to 2 4 weeks ago. So there's no way that it would have taken a hive that long to take a 1 to 2 syrup. And clearly that's dripping. What in the world? That is really strange. That shouldn't happen. Let me see here. Oh, hope they, I don't have my veil on. Hope they don't tag me. It's heavy. I see a cluster down there. All right, hang on, girls. Don't zap me in the face. Why? How is that even possible? I can see some comb up there. A little bit of camped honey. There's the bees. It's still a little chilly. We're just... Whoop, they're trying to get me. Hang on. Put my veil on. It's just getting up into the 50s, and I'm in the shade, so it's still a little nippy here. Look at that. It's supposed to get up in the 60s today, and we're supposed to be back in the 70s tomorrow. So that feels like it's at least a gallon of syrup, maybe more. Did I forget to poke the holes? That makes me wonder. I'm like, that's crazy. There's no way. I mean, that's poked. That's poked. That one's maybe sealed. But I mean, anyways, duh, I poked the holes because you wouldn't have a giant pool of syrup there on the ground. Well, I got a little mist. Look at that. New buckets and old buckets. God dang, man. Look at those stinking yellow jackets. That is crazy. This one looks like it's been robbed out too. Look at that. See the wax cappings? Probably got pushed out of here in the pallet. Bucket still got a little syrup in it. Not a lot. Quarter gallon maybe, something. Oh, there goes that bucket. Huh, well, we got a little mystery here. Oh yeah, they definitely feel dead. Shoot, totally wiped out. Huh, that's not good. Dang it. So I may have to actually go through this yard. I wasn't planning on it. I really wanted to just fill some buckets. It was too early to check the splits that I made here. This one too. I mean, how in the world? And look at this one. I marked it as a really strong hive. This was a California grade hive. It's still got, feels like half a gallon in there. And the bucket's even a little broken. So, and they haven't taken it. I wonder, there's just no way. There's no way this many would be like that. And clearly I poked the holes. These are empty. Huh. I know the hives weren't like super strong, but 4 weeks. Technically it's been a little bit over 4 weeks. It's empty. This side's a little better. I wonder if it's possible that I came here and topped these buckets off and didn't write it in my notes. I have no memory of that. These are all empty. Full of yellow jackets. I don't know. I mean, I rebuilt a few. There weren't even that many splits here. There were only like 4 or 5 splits. And I think there were a couple queens I just pinched because they were looking a little iffy. So it wasn't like I gutted the yard or something and accidentally killed a bunch of hives. That's crazy. And look at that. A lot of dead there. That's got a full bucket. So I'm wondering if they're dead too. I see some bees in there. Could be a robber. I don't know. Let me check that one too. This is really weird. Very weird. I see a cluster down there, bees. It's not super heavy. This was a split. Probably put the split on top so there's nobody down there. Huh. I don't know. I do see some bees in there. I'm gonna have to open some of these hives and see what the heck's going on, because that's really concerning. A lot of dead over here. Look at that. I don't know if they got robbed or attacked or something. I mean, geez, look at that. And I got syrup dripping right in the mouth of the hive here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we got ourselves a little mystery. I'm gonna have to figure out what's going on here. I hope the simple explanation is just that I'm stupid and didn't write down that I was here. And I have the memory of a goldfish, so perhaps I just forgot that I fed them extra. I don't know. I'm gonna have to. The bucket there looks like it's ruptured on the side. I don't know. I'm gonna go run through some of these and see what the heck's going on. This is concerning. Here's the first pallet in the yard. That's the one obviously that I found first. I got robbed out. This one's been losing a lot of syrup. That's not a bad cluster. I mean, it's cold, so they're pretty tight. They look like they're pretty honey bound on the bottom just from glancing at them. There is a tiny little cluster up here, and I can see what I did. I did checker the foundation between some comb. And they're up there. That's weird. Their bucket was empty. This one looks pretty small. As you can see, there's not much there. It's maybe about it. Small cluster. Very few bees up top, a little bit. Like this one I would probably rotate. I can see they're pretty honey bound too. Yeah, they've got, I didn't checker the foundation here, but I've got about 4 frames of comb. Maybe I was hoping they would move up there with the bucket. Maybe it got too cold. I don't know. Something else may have happened. Like this one, yeah, this box now needs to go on the bottom. This one needs to come up top so that little cluster can reach the bucket I'm about to give them. And you see they've made a little wax here. This is not a bad little box here. I mean, that's almost 8 frames. If it was warm, it might spread out. And they are up. This one is up here. Actually, you can see that one's capped off honey there. That one's capped off honey here. Capped off honey, capped off honey. Looks like I did checker this foundation, gave them new foundation. I can see some fresh wax production, so it's not bad. I don't know. It's very strange. And this one here, though, it feels like they've got half a gallon. Not half a gallon, I mean 1 gallon, half a bucket. And this one too. This one's even more full. That feels like a 3/4 full bucket. How is that? This one I can kind of understand because maybe the cluster couldn't reach the syrup with the cold weather that came. They're still producing wax though. Look at that. That's an old frame of foundation. They've drawn that out, or are in the process of drawing it right now. That's crazy that they're taking it. They're making wax. They're in a super. Huh, that's just weird. Why have they not taken that bucket? I can see I've got all 3 holes poked here. So they should be able to take it down. Do they not want it? That's very strange. I'm not really sure what's going on here. Look at this one here. This was a split, but it was a split from I think a couple of months ago. And I didn't like the queen for whatever reason. I can't remember now, but I just wrote on my flag that I was a requeen. So I felt confident just pinching the queen and not dropping a cell or anything in there. So they had to have at least a decent little population a month ago. They do have a new queen. They made their own. I can see her. She's a little small. She's got a very tiny cluster, as you can probably tell from, I mean, a small brood nest, as you can tell from the small cluster here. They have almost no food. They're extremely light. This box here was on the bottom, so I did put the split up top, which was the right thing to do. What's weird is this bucket here is 100% full. And I can see that I poked at least 2 out of the 3 holes here are still open. For whatever reason, and if my notes are correct, in 4 weeks, this little split, that yeah, is small, took almost 0 of a 1 to 2 syrup. And those black buckets, you know, normally they leak and stuff a lot faster. To the point that they're about to starve to death. I mean, if I don't add some resources to this one, it's toast. I don't really know exactly what's going on. It's so strange. I've been doing some of the other hives over here, and I've had to rotate Not all of the hives, but I've had to rotate maybe 75% so far. There is comb and there's honey up top. There's new foundation. You can see they mostly got new boxes. And the bottom box is fairly honey bound on most of them. Not 100%, but bordering honey binding and honey bound. And they're just not up there touching the bucket, which again, maybe they just went down because of the cold snap. Maybe they've been up there, you know, in the past week, and this is just an off day that I'm looking. But again, the majority of the buckets have been somewhat full, like 50% or more full. So I'm kind of taking a lead from the bees. If the bucket is full of syrup, and I can't exactly figure out why, like the holes aren't clogged or whatever, I am rotating them, even if there were a few bees up here. If they've taken the bucket, or there is a nice cluster up here and they've taken most of the bucket, I'm leaving them. But the vast majority I'm having to spin. And I can see last time I was here, I did rotate some. I've come across some that are clearly, everything's up here, and the bottom is not much going on. So that tells me I was rotating 4 weeks ago, and I felt confident the hives I didn't rotate were good enough to take that bucket. But something has happened in the last 4 weeks to stop that, and I really just don't know exactly what. I haven't figured it out yet. And this hive is just kind of weird too. It's got a good 4-frame cluster, maybe 5. So I got a foundation there, and looks like mostly capped off honey there. They seem healthy. The super up here, all brand new frames of foundation, new box. That's all capped off. Got a couple frames of partially drawn comb over here as well. So like they did have a little bit of space up here to come move up, but they for whatever reason didn't. But they did make a lot of. This one actually took their bucket, and they've got mostly a box of honey. Like this one could potentially be a hair honey bound. That could be it. But man, the population look is just so extremely low, especially for one that was strong enough to draw out, you know, 10 frames of foundation and cap them off with honey. It's just like the population's crashed. I just don't know why. Here's the brood nest of that hive. I'm trying not to pull too much brood because it is a little nippy over here, but I gotta look a little bit. I mean, look, that's a nice brood pattern there. I don't see any outright disease. I can definitely see pollen, and I've seen pollen in every colony, so it's not a protein deficiency. We know it's not a carb deficiency. It has not been a temperature deficiency. It's just been a 2-day freak day where it's gotten cold. And again, this hive would look a little better, you know, when it warms up some, that the cluster will expand. I know they're just sitting on that brood because it's chilly, but I don't know. I could almost say like this one is kind of small, maybe because of the honey binding. They are a bit honey bound. But I definitely can't say that about the other colonies. I mean, there's no disease there. At first I was like, I wonder if they could have some kind of nosema, because I know nosema can stop the bees from processing and digesting carbohydrates. But I treated them with Fumidil 4 weeks ago, for sure. Same as I've treated every other hive, and I don't think the Fumidil's done any damage because I haven't seen it. I've done the exact same mixture in all the colonies, in all the yards, except for there was, I think, 2 or 3 yards I was experimenting with, but this one wasn't. This one got my standard dose that the vast majority of the hives did, so I don't think the Fumidil hurt them. I don't think the syrup was bad because, you know, I would have seen that in other yards too. I don't know. Maybe there was a little break in the pollen, you know, a month or 2 ago, and I'm just now seeing the results of it. That's a possibility. But they seem to be growing and expanding to me now. I don't know, man. I'm kind of stumped. This is one that I had marked as probably a California level hive, or the one that's going to make it. Had a yellow pin in it. You can see they look really good. They're making wax. They look healthy. Definitely slam honey bound on the bottom, no doubt about that. All I see is capped food down there. But they are up here in the top box, which also looks a little bit bound up. I can see some fresh wax production going on up there. They're drawing that frame out right there, pretty nice. So they've got a cluster, but this one also has only taken about half their bucket, about a gallon in 4 weeks. They're definitely taking in enough to produce wax to draw frames. But why are they taking so little feed? I just don't know. I see many of them that are drawing these new foundations in there. That's brand new wax. This one only had a gallon bucket, probably the 2-gallon burst when I was here. I replaced it, and they did take all of it, although I can hear a tiny bit in there. They took a gallon, and they seem to be utilizing it okay. Okay, well that's something, I guess. So here's something nice to see. This was a drone laying hive. I don't know. I think it was back in a couple of months ago, I believe is what the flag says. And I couldn't find the drone layer, so I shook her out. I shook all the frames out in front of the hive like I normally do. And didn't scratch the drone brood, and I rebuilt it, whatever it was, 3-4 brood back then. Cell, queen, I don't know. And when I came around last month, there was a queen that was laying, but I wasn't sure if she was good. I thought perhaps that queen was it was either the old drone layer or maybe the new queen didn't mate well, because what had happened was I had the worker nest, which looked kind of like this, but then I had some interspersed drone pupa in there where it was sort of raised up. And I think I showed that in the last video, where if you don't scratch the drone pupa down with your hive tool and make them level, it'll kind of create this kind of hills and valley effect in the brood nest. And it'll look, and it may be some drone brood in there. It may look like a bad queen or a failing queen or a not well mated queen. This was one of those hives. And I flagged it. I wrote a date. I wrote a note on it, so I know exactly that's what happened. So I went in here expecting to flip this hive up, because the queen was probably going to be bad. But I checked all of her brood frames, and they look quite a bit like that. So everything is good and worker. The bees have actually leveled down the drone comb that was there, and made it just a nice worker nest. So the bees will clean that stuff up, but it appears to have taken at least a month or maybe a little bit longer for them to have done that. So that's why sometimes when I see some drone pupa in the worker nest, I have to kind of think back, like, is it just because I was in a rush and I didn't flatten it all out myself? And I could have pinched that queen last month and been in a bind, but thankfully she turned out to be a really good queen, and the split's actually going to take just okay. There's a little bit of mite activity here. You see there, got a deformed wing worker. I've been trying to check the brood nest in the second half of the yard. It's warmed up some. There's another one. So I can definitely account for mites being a problem on this one. This one's super weak. Fell down to a 3-frame population. But I saw one other hive that had a little bit of diseased larva. Didn't see any deformed wing or anything. But all the other brood nests have looked pretty darn clean. I haven't seen any major issues. There were a couple sick hives here last month that I flagged, and one of them, the brood nest is clean now, but I had to break it down to a single because it was so weak. That's what I'm going to do to this one. And then the other one that was sick last month has died. That one was very sick, so definitely got a little mite activity. You can see there's still some beetles crawling around, and shoot, almost in December. So yeah, that's not great at all. So that's probably accounting for some of it, but that doesn't explain everything. I'm kind of coming to the conclusion that, well, now I can say mites. I was going to say mites weren't a problem, but this one's very sick. I'm thinking that a lot of the hives are just very honey bound, and I think with my recent round of splits, because I know there were several splits here that had failed. I think 2 or 3 months ago. So I have rebuilt this yard a few times, and that plus the honey binding plus the mite issue, and I did checkerboard a lot of foundation in last time I was here. That's going to explain for some of this weakness. That's what I think it's just kind of a combination of those factors: honey binding, and recent splits, and maybe a tad bit of mites. And I wonder if we've had some swarming, because this one's an exception, but most everything I've been checking has had like 10 solid frames of capped honey in the brood nest. And yeah, they're up here in the top box to some degree, but they haven't fully drawn it out, or they haven't fully moved up there. And the few queens I've come across, I have not seen a single marked queen. And I know for a fact we marked all the queens in this yard. I just wrote it in my notes. that was done. So yeah, possible they cleaned off the dots, and that does happen, but not seeing any. I wonder if because that nest was down here was so bad honey bound that they swarmed. That could also be some of it. And then some of the smaller hives are probably just splits that I made that maybe took a couple months ago and just haven't boosted up enough. So I think it's just a combination of factors here. But this yard as a whole is in pretty rough shape. It sure as heck is not ready for California yet. Had some pump and syrup problems here when I was trying to feed. I brought this half tote of syrup, which I thought was mixed properly, and this yard was going to take about half a tote, so I was going to use that and then use this for the other 2 yards I wanted to feed today, which I don't think is going to happen. But after like 30 minutes of it trying to mix, it just wouldn't. It was just like solid, and the pump did not want to fire up. I had to near about rip the stinking cord off. I don't know if the fuel filter's getting clogged, carburetor's dirty, I don't know. It's a new pump we just got earlier this summer. Was having a hard time firing off, and I cranked it up this morning, because it's been cold. So when it's cold, I'll try to go ahead and just give the tote like maybe a quick mix, and that seems to help in the bee yard. So I'm not just standing here waiting for this thing to spin and spin and spin and spin. So it fired up fine this morning, but when I got here and wanted to actually feed, it wouldn't fire up at all. And I thought maybe at first I could see the syrup going through my little recirculation line there. And it was mixing. I could see like the fluid vibrating. But it would not come out of the hose here. I even like disconnected the hose from my reel here, and it was just kind of bubbling, like there was air in the system. I don't know if this thing wasn't, pulling anything. I don't know if there was a problem with the impeller. I don't know. And I just sat there for, it felt like half an eternity, trying to fill the buckets up. And you saw most of the buckets are already full. So I was like, this yard's, I'm going to feed real quick, go on to the next yard. And it was just like bloop, bloop, bloop. Just big old fat chunks of just straight solid corn syrup. So I was like, oh man, I screwed up. And I didn't add enough water to that tote. Or, maybe I didn't add water to it and accidentally grabbed a tote that hadn't been mixed. So that's what it seemed like. And when I disconnected the main hose here, it was ice cold. I mean, like an ice cube. And we had that cold snap last night, and it does cause the corn syrup to really, really thicken up, even if it's got some water to it. So I anticipated again, that there would be a little bit of a slow mixing, but I was dead sure that it was corn syrup, just solid, no water or something. And I was like, maybe that's the case. So I went over, swapped everything over to this tote, and I just mixed this morning. So the water we added to it was, relatively warm, coming out of the ground. And I know it's a correct 1-to-2 ratio. I even added a little extra water to this one because I thought I might end up, having that this one might be a little bit honey bound. I wasn't sure. So I brought one tote that was supposed to be a little thicker and one was a little thinner. And I was just going to do whatever I thought needed to be done, whatever they needed. Anyways, it just wouldn't mix at all either. It just, for like half an hour, it just didn't look like it was doing anything. It was just like jello. The corn syrup, you can see, was just sitting here. And I was getting so aggravated. And finally, eventually, I mean, it must have been at least half an hour, it popped. And it started, the fluid started meshing around. Because it's 2 parts water, 1 part sugar. So should mix very quickly, but it did not. And even after I got that was good and mixed, it wouldn't come out of the hose here. And I was like, holy crap, man, I guess something's wrong in here. Or, there's some dead bees. It happens sometimes. Bees fly in the tote when I'm adding water in the morning. Clogs up the pump. I thought I was just disconnecting everything. So, I've got syrup all over the place, leaking, pulling up on the ground. And I think all it was the syrup had gotten so solid, it was just kind of stuck in this hose. And it took a long time to run all that new, fresh, clean syrup through there and pump it out. But it took me an hour, I think, between those 2 totes trying to figure it out and getting the pump running to even start filling the buckets. And then it still took me 3 or 4 pallets in before it finally popped and started, blowing out faster like it should. So I had plenty of time. So when I was waiting, I did kind of equalize some of the syrup, the old syrup. It didn't smell bad or anything. I was afraid it might be fermented from last month, but seems to be okay. And but I did spread it around a little bit. That way I know everybody got some fresh syrup too, just in case. And you can see we took a little bit of hit on the hives here. I think we lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We lost 6 hives. You know, I had 5 splits here, so I expected some I was going to lose. And this pallet here is already this pallet's been pretty rough here, so I ended up breaking them down to singles because the only way they're going to survive. But I lost more than I thought, and there was another one over here also I had to break down. I believe that was that one that had some mite problems. But outside of maybe a couple of hives that had mites, I didn't see any signs of disease or any other mites or anything. One thing I did do when I was waiting for that syrup to mix is I just ran around and crushed yellow jackets for about an hour, so that was fun, I guess. There's still tons of them. I rotated definitely almost all the bottom boxes, which are super duper honey bound where the brood's at, pulled them up top, and I put the foundation / comb down there. I'm probably like 3/4 of the yard. That's how that went. So I'm hoping that'll entice them, and having the new syrup there to get up there and take it. My problem is, since there's foundation, there's not a lot of anything, no resources down in the bottom boxes, and these are pretty honey bound. You know, they don't want to go down this time of year. Bees want to go up. So I don't know if they'll go down there and do anything. I don't know if the honey binding is going to get worse. I did take some of the dead out comb and spread it around with the hives that were especially honey bound, and then I tried to give some of that honey to some of those little hives that weren't doing so hot. You know, I could have spent a whole nother day in here fixing frames. I didn't want to do that because I was trying to feed 150 hives today. Still ended up having to do a little bit, and that's just how it's been. And so day's already almost over, and I just got through here, and I feel like I only kind of half worked it. I didn't even get its full work through that it really needs. So yeah, just kind of disappointing here. And I still can't quite figure out exactly why they didn't take the last month's bucket. The best guess I can come up with is that they were just honey bound down there, and I did write in my notes the populations were decreasing last month, so maybe they were sort of trending down either due to honey binding or mites or lack of pollen. I can't really be certain, and just didn't feel incentivized to get up in the supers. I did write that in the notes too, that they didn't appear to be getting in the supers last month. Wasn't a temperature issue because it's been scalding freaking hot for the last 4 weeks. And the mites aren't that bad here, and there's no really major signs of disease. And I really don't think the syrup was bad, because I would have seen it in the other locations. So I just feel like they just didn't want to get in the supers for whatever reason, which is crazy because this was one of the few yards I was able to distribute comb in the supers and give them brand new stinking frames. And they didn't want to get up there. So I don't know. I'm still a little puzzled exactly what's going on here and why the populations are dropping so bad. Because I was saying earlier, last year this yard really shot up in the fall. The radish is blooming, and there's some fields out that way. I didn't see if those fields are blooming or not, but in general it is blooming now. So maybe that's going to help. There's definitely no pollen deficiency. There's 2 types of pollen coming in. All the brood nests had nice, arches of pollen around it. And I don't even really know if that was the problem. I'm not really sure exactly what happened here. But this is one of the biggest losses I've had here this week, which, I haven't really been digging into hives that much. But this was like you saw, I walked in here and I could see there were problems. So I don't think some of them are ready for California. I'm exaggerating a bit because I'm agitated, but most of this yard is not ready. And I don't really know what to do to get them ready. Part of me wants to feed them to spur them to draw the foundation so the queen can lay, and to entice them to, just to have some calories to burn. Get out of there, yellow jacket, on my camera. And but if I feed them too much, they're going to get more honey bound. It's going to be a problem too. So the good thing is this super thin syrup doesn't really cause them to gain much weight. So I'm hoping they'll just consume it to produce wax, and maybe consume it to for the queen to lay some eggs. But I don't really know. They don't really seem like they want to do that much. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen here. I'm going to put this on my problem list, and I got to come back, and probably I think what's going to have to happen is I'm going to have to take some of these hives that are super duper honey bound and just sort of spread that honey away. And maybe, since a lot of these bottom boxes now have good brand new comb, like fresh drawn comb, even though they're not doing anything with it, I can probably move some of that into the brood nest, or even move the honey down below, something like that. it's going to take a lot of frame manipulation, and then I might hit them with another extra thin bucket just to do something. But I don't know. I'm concerned about this one, but it's not. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. They're not dying. They're not dead. They're not sick. Their queens seem fine. The brood seems healthy. You know, it could be worse, but I don't know. I think I just need to spread the frames around and come out here and manipulate it. But that's a whole day of work, easy. And right now, I just want to focus on getting all the hives fed. And then I'll come back around to problems like this and just, you know, spend a day or 2 days or whatever I have, try and get them up before almonds. But I want this yard to go because it is a good yard and it's got great equipment, and it'd be a shame for it not to make it. But we'll get there. I've still got time. I just need to make sure I don't forget about it. All right, well, I'm going to go feed one more yard on the way home, and hopefully I don't have any more problems. I guess that's it for this week's video, because I want to just film. I just want to feed, and before it gets dark, because I think it's 4:30 now. It's been getting dark at like 5, so I'm just going to haul butt, and hopefully don't run into any headaches over there in the next spot. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll start digging in the hives a little more next week when it warms up and I'm done feeding. And I'll talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.